Hey everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Baron's Guide to Everything. As you probably gleaned from the title of this video, we're here to talk about Disney's Encanto. I'll be honest and say that I hadn't heard a thing about this movie until a few weeks ago. And even then, it might have just been a random ad on social media somewhere. This anime season is a little light on quality for me, so on a bored Saturday night, I booted up Disney Plus and gave it a watch. I went in completely blind and with zero expectations, so it was definitely a pleasant surprise. Okay, hold on. Let me actually amend that statement. I actually went in with negative expectations. Disney has a weird habit of advertising diversity and stories featuring people of color, only to spend minimal time actually portraying them as people of color. Tiana's a frog for most of her movie, Miguel spends most of his film surrounded by skeletons, and What's-His-Face is an emoji for most of Soul. So I was honestly worried we'd get transported somewhere and all the brown people would be like talking fruit or something. I don't know. But they stuck with it this time and provided a fairly nuanced depiction of a Latino family. It's really easy to find yourself in the Madrigal family, even if it's just in bits and pieces. There's a lot to like about this movie. The message, the music, the way it succeeds at delivering both with flair. It's also legitimately a stronger film than a lot of other Disney animations because its use of symbols and layered musical language add a surprising amount of depth. For instance, the progenitors of the Madrigal family are named Pedro and Alma, Pedro being Spanish for Peter, meaning rock, and Alma meaning soul. It's from rock and soul that the musically named family come from. You know, it's just these little things like that pop up all over the place and make me smile. Now, this isn't necessarily meant to be a review or a detailed analysis of the movie, by the way. I just want to talk about it, so spoilers ahead. But let's establish some shorthand before going in. There are a couple of repeating symbols throughout the film, and they're worth addressing here. So, anytime you see the color green, it's meant typically to represent growth, change, unity, and prosperity. Butterflies represent hope, metamorphosis, the coming of spring, and they're famously short-lived. And then Abuela's black shawl comes up a lot, which I think represents trauma, the walls around her heart, and mourning. So the first thing I want to talk about is the I Want song. Waiting on a Miracle is by and large the best one they've released in a long time. And it ties amazingly well into one of the most fascinating protagonists to come out of a Disney film. I'll say it, ever. For those who aren't familiar with the terminology, the I Want song or the I Wish song in musicals is exactly what it sounds like. A song typically sung by the protagonist that tells the audience in no uncertain terms what the protagonist is yearning for. I want adventure and possibly a kindred spirit. I want to experience human culture for myself and possibly have this guy's babies. I want the respect and authority my dad has and possibly to not ever feel afraid again. I want to break with tradition and possibly avoid responsibilities laid on me by patriarchal forces. I want to feel like I belong. You get it by now, I'm sure. The point of the I Want song, aside from firmly establishing who the story is about, is to set up motivation and clue the audience in on the character's projected arc. Waiting on a Miracle does the best job of setting up the narrative arc out of every example I've listed. Stephanie Beatriz has one of the most versatile voices I've heard coming out of an actress.
I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. I wanted more than I can tell. It's that song.
New situations may stoke old fears. Future sensations of inadequacy may reawaken long-forgotten insecurities.
Ta-da!
It's been a long time since you came around. Been a long time, but I'm back in town. And this time I'm not leaving without you.
And man, did she bring the passion into this song. And that's just the performance. The song itself is so poignant and really clever if you're paying attention. I would heal what's broken. I would move the mountains. I would make new flowers bloom. I would show this family something new, open your eyes. Like, she lays it all out for us. Everything she would do for the sake of her family, for the chance of being accepted, she eventually does. I also really like this little moment here. Notice the color of the firework just behind her. Yeah. So Mirabel isn't an XP self-insert generic princess type. Her character is so much more intentional than that, and it's this intentionality that makes her so popular and is the driving factor behind everyone demanding to know where her gift was on Twitter. Side note, just to make it abundantly clear to people who didn't get it, she never got a gift because she never needed one. To say nothing of the fact one of the major themes of the film is how destructive it can be to hyperfixate on a single aspect of someone's existence, like their talent, physical traits, or intellect. How you are more than what you can contribute is another major theme. Even if you misread the message and insist the gifts are given with the express intention of using them to help others, Mirabel doesn't need one to do that. You see, what we have in Mirabel is a heart so gentle and open that she can literally heal generational trauma, which in and of itself is pretty damn miraculous. The fact that she can get literally everyone to talk about Bruno, get Luisa to unload her emotional burdens, inspire confidence in Antonio, and can even make a space safe enough for Isabella to shed her perfect persona is testament to how powerful a compassionate soul can be. But going back to my original point, there's so much going on with this character, I'm not even sure where to start. Like, I guess we can start with her name, which conveniently sounds a lot like the word miracle, especially the way they sometimes pronounce it. The similarity implying she is actually what she's been waiting for in her I Want song, or how it literally means wondrous in Latin, because yes, she is actually that special, and how some spellings of the name contain the root words mira, meaning to look or see, and bel, meaning beautiful, and how that ties into the way she can see the beauty in everyone, and because it's Disney, beauty is truth. So she sees people for what they are, which by the way is also hinted at by her signature glasses, which are green. This opens up the layers within her character design. Every other character sports their motif somewhere on their clothing, and said motif is a representation of their gift. Mirabel, however, sports everyone else's symbols on her skirt, thus cementing her status as the future matriarch of the family. You see, even the name Madrigal is layered with symbolism. A madrigal is an a cappella choir, as well as a style of song, characterized by multiple voices overlapping. Fun fact, I really only know this because my older brother was a madrigal. Hi, Cisco. So, we have every family member with their magic power, their voice, if you will, and we have Mirabel, who doesn't have any magic powers. She's silent, so to speak. But every madrigal has one member that doesn't sing, or in this case, doesn't have a magic power. The conductor. It goes without saying that while the conductor doesn't sing, they're the most influential member of the choir. And a good conductor can pull the very best out of every single member. We see this in her interaction with Isabella, where she starts the song in the Disney Princess Register, and gradually, through Mirabel's coaching, hits this note. Which Isabella already admitted she wouldn't have been able to do without her empathic baby sister. So, what happened with her door? I've seen some people talk about how Mirabel actually did receive a gift, the power to break down walls, which is why her door disappeared and why she's a threat to the house. I definitely see the plausibility behind this, but given the themes of the film, I'm not inclined to agree. When she touches the door, a few things are happening. It's my opinion that the Encanto acknowledges her as the next matriarch. She doesn't get a special room or magic powers because she's meant to inherit the whole house, to be the next conductor. The other thing that is kind of glossed over is that Abuela isn't just the matriarch of the family, she's an important leader for the town. The fact that all the kids in the town attach themselves to Mirabel is another signifier that she's meant to inherit that role, as the next generation is already following her around and hanging on her every word. So why does the candle flicker? If you ask me, the candle flickers not because of Mirabel, but in response to Abuela Alma. The door disappearing and the candle flickering are two events occurring at the same time, but independent of each other, and their timing is what makes the scene feel ominous to all present. Tragic coincidence which leads to misunderstanding is a common storytelling technique. That flicker was an omen, a warning, specifically for Abuela. So the sequence of events is as follows. Mirabel touches the door. The Encanto heralds her as the next matriarch by taking the door away. Abuela doesn't understand what's happening, immediately assumes the worst, and shuts her heart to Mirabel, which delivers a body blow to the Encanto, causing the candle to flicker. Notice how Abuela is still wrapped up in her trauma defense mechanism? That's why she can't see the significance of the situation and instead goes into survival mode. Assuming the worst and distancing herself from her granddaughter is the safe thing to do because a threat to her security is something she does not do well with. I don't think this is the start of all the cracks in the foundation, but I do think that the way she starts to treat Mirabel is the beginning of the end of the Encanto, which leads me to the Encanto itself. The heroic self-sacrifice / death of a loved one is a mainstay in fantasy stories. It kind of goes like this. The mentor or parental figure lays down their life for the sake of the next generation, and in exchange for all the love, compassion, and guidance the mentor would have provided, the universe gives the next generation the only thing it can in that instance: power. Oftentimes, the power to make sure that something like this never happens again. It's my theory that when Abuelo Pedro sacrificed himself, his love manifested into the Encanto. The magic is quite literally love. My reasoning for this is that Pedro's symbol, the butterfly, is what becomes emblazoned on the candle, which, by the way, is Pedro and Alma's wedding candle, a ritualistic symbol of their union. He bought them safety, security, a life free from any external threat, and he paid for it all with his life. The thing is, everyone else had to keep on living. And the trauma of it all pretty much guaranteed that the Encanto's days were numbered. Love can only go so far if you take it for granted. Sooner or later, Luisa would have cracked. Isabela would have snapped. Something would have broken the foundation because Alma's expectations would have eroded it all away. We know this because Mirabel isn't the only example of how fragile the bond of family is. Obligatory let's talk about Bruno joke. People keep talking about how relatable Bruno is, but I personally can't see it. Nope. Don't relate to Bruno at all. Joking aside, he's set up as the ominous red herring of a villain from the get-go. I would not be surprised if younger audience members thought he'd be the cause of the cracks or the reason Mirabel never got her gift with his creepy drawings and lime green color scheme, but we students of story structure weren't fooled for a moment. Typically, if someone can see the future and then mysteriously disappears, it's usually to prevent said future from coming to pass. Not to mention his predictions weren't ever that bad. They were just what happens with the passage of time. Fish die, people gain weight, or go bald. He was only ever scary because he embodied change. Literally. For Abuela Alma, however, this was a no-no. Truthfully, it's a very Latino thing to care about status and appearances more than is probably healthy. Having a son the community is afraid of would have made Abuela incredibly uncomfortable, and I can imagine just how hard she was on him because of it, which brings me to another point. The fact that Alma is the closest thing we have to an antagonist in this film, and she's not. She's just a wounded old lady full of regrets, unintentionally passing her pain down the line. I say regrets because, well, let's compare Alma to Isabela really quick. I'm willing to bet Alma latched onto Isabela the way she did because she reminded her of herself. The desire for Isabela to be perfect, have a perfect life with a perfect husband and loads of children, was a manifestation of what she had expected her life to be. Honestly, the resemblance is strong enough to confuse Bruno's future vision and serve as yet another red herring for the audience. When the vision shows Mirabel embracing someone, I immediately thought it was going to be Abuela, because the cracks in the home were the obvious metaphor for the cracks in the family relationships, and the source of those cracks was Abuela's treatment of her family. Bruno even says the time is all out of order, and we're shown the butterfly from the ending just before the embrace. We're led to believe Mirabel has to make up with Isabela to save everything, but if you look closely, she's actually embracing a young Alma. Talking to Isabela winds up being the catalyst for the finale, not the finale itself. So when Mirabel sees the butterfly, Pedro's symbol, she puts it all together, and with her infinite grace and compassion, acknowledges Alma's pain and helps heal her too. Okay, so this thing is already over 2,700 words long, which means I should wrap it up here. So here are some rapid fire things I loved about the movie in no particular order. Abuela being so focused on Isabela being perfect that she plucks the only different flower. Augustine being so accident prone, Julieta just rolls her eyes at his bee stings. Like, that's almost certainly how they got to know each other. Dude was in that line every day. If I wrote a story about how they met, I'd go as far as saying he would sometimes get her on purpose just to have an excuse to see her. Felix instantly calming Pepa down and being the only man around not intimidated by her storms. I mean, that is just chef's kiss. Bruno being well aware of how everyone talks about him hurts. Like, it just hurts. But I love that Mirabel can literally see through the walls he tries to put up in front of her. Genius. Camilo being a bit of a melodramatic clown who openly shows affection for his tia and mama while being gender fluid really should have gotten more attention, especially given Mirabel looks at him when she says, "I would heal what's broken." They're not that far apart in age, so it makes me wonder if they used to be super close until he got his gift and she didn't. This line,
"Maybe your gift is being in denial."
It feels a little mature for a kid to say, but having heard second graders make all manner of inappropriate jokes, I buy it. Children are fucking savages, man. The fact that the house waves at the matriarch and even waves goodbye to Mirabel. Finally, that it's still all completely open for interpretation and theory crafting. Like, I can also argue that the miracle is a metaphor for the life Abuela built alone, but the kicker is that it's a life and home built on tragedy, and the family was given gifts which represent their own form of trauma defense mechanism, because we know that everyone's gifts have an emotional factor to them. Julieta is the caretaker of the village because that's her outlet, and comfort food is real, folks. Pepa has such a strong personality, the vibe in the room changes based on her headspace, and she knows it. So even though she goes through intense mood swings, she has to constantly keep her emotions in check because of how it affects the people around her. Bruno could just be incredibly insightful, but he's also so socially awkward that he's off-putting. It could be a spin on neurodivergence. You know, "you're gonna get fat if you keep eating like that" is definitely something I've heard someone say, and it would ruffle some feathers, even if it's true. Especially if it's true. Camilo, being a teenage middle child, doesn't quite know who he is yet, so he plays chameleon and does impressions of people to make everyone smile. And I mean, in reality, the comedic relief in your circle of friends is probably the most sensitive. Luisa works herself to the point of exhaustion. Isabella embodies the feminine ideal to keep up appearances. Antonio's only friends throughout the entire film are animals. Dolores is in everybody's business and is always dealing with a form of sensory overload. But Mirabel, being who she is whole enough that she never develops any sort of defense mechanism. No power, no gift, which is a miracle. If anything, that makes her more special than everyone else in the house because she faces everything head on. The family even acknowledges how brave she's been. And she's so open-minded that after multiple family members and her entire community tell her that Tío Bruno is bad news, she still says this.
"I don't think you make bad things happen. Sometimes family weirdos just get a bad rap."
After a single conversation with him. So when she touches the door, the candle flickers as a way to herald the person who will break the cycle. Again, this is a good thing because the foundation is trauma. In order for the family to continue to prosper and thrive, a new foundation must be built, one of love, joy, and respect in each other's lives. But change is not easy. Ask a butterfly. And for a new foundation to be put in, the old one has to be broken and ripped out. I could go on, but the point I'm trying to make is that good art makes you ask questions, and great art opens the door for conversations. I'll see you all in the next one. Cuídense.